Oh, hello again, everybody. We're here, my buddy David Battafarano from Paramus. I told you we were going to do a Godfather show, and here it is. We're at my mother's house with the living room. We got the china cabinet with all the nice plates behind. So we got a nice setting. And today we're going to talk about the Godfather trilogy. Dave and I grew up. I'm a couple years older than him, but we grew up at the same time under similar circumstances in an Italian-American setting. We watched the same stuff on HBO and Cinemax and all the shows. And so later in life, we both went to the University of Delaware. We weren't lucky enough to party and know each other when we were on campus. We met later in life when we started teaching together. And it was very quick, very obvious that we had similar upbringing and we shared stories.
Fast friends.
Very close friends. And The Godfather was one of those things that brought us together. We're able to throw lines back and forth during the day. Kind of gets us through the day. Sometimes we laugh at each other. And the Godfather was a big deal for both of us. I think for me, it's still one of those movies that if I'm flipping through, if I find it, I'll stop. And I'll wherever it is in the movie, I'll watch for a while.
2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, I'll jump
however
in.
much is left.
It's one of those ones where I'll just keep watching it every time I see it on. And listen, Hollywood, gangster mafia movies, that's nothing new. Hollywood has been making gangster movies since the silent films. One of the original Hollywood movies was called The Black Hand. It dealt with mafia issues and then you got Rod Steiger playing Scarface, Al Capone back in the 40s. Hollywood's made a lot of money off of that genre and that style of film. It's funny sometimes, did Hollywood make the gangster or did the gangster make Hollywood? It's something to think about. That image, the imagery, even the way they talk, the way the films are set up. It's nothing new, right? The Godfather is special, I think. Maybe when it was made, how it was made. It seems to have survived the test of time. And we'll talk a little bit about The Godfather today. Again, one of those special movies, I think, for me. You too?
Yeah, without a doubt. When the film predates us in that, when it came out in 1972, I wasn't born yet.
I was one.
You were just one. Just a little one.
Yeah.
But really, looking at the history of it through the 70s and 80s, and then when the 80s turned to the 90s and we got Goodfellas and other things, The Godfather really glamorized, a negative side of the Italian-American culture. I can just remember hearing my grandfather's stories about it. Yeah, it's a good movie, but...
Yeah, and listen, I think as Italian-Americans, we live with those stereotypes constantly. Mm-hmm. I think Italians have thick skin. I think Italians have good what do you call sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because I think most of us...
good self-esteem as well.
And I play it up sometimes, too. I have students sometimes, when they first meet me, they say, are you in the mafia? I'll say, only on the weekends.
All right, we're killers on the weekends.
Yeah, so I play along because you grow up, what else are you going to do? So, but there are stereotypes. And to pretend like that they don't exist is not real. It does, and those movies had something to do with that, certainly. But we're proud Italian Americans, and we're proud of who we are. Before we get into The Godfather, because you mentioned Goodfellas, real quick, some of the other top ones we like. Goodfellas we both love. Mm-hmm. Casino, you like Casino?
I do. I mean, even with it was more of the gambling aspect.
Yeah.
But, think about it though, and that De Niro he's Jewish.
Rothstein.
He's right. And Sam Rothstein, I know a lot of the attention shifts over to Pesci. Mm. But again, what is he in that? He's a gangster. He's a tough guy.
What other good... Of course, and then The Sopranos on HBO years ago now. And that also kind of kept all this kind of going.
I think The Sopranos is the cherry on top to what The Godfather started.
You don't think... what do you think about the future of mafia movies? Is there one?
You don't want to... Everybody's with the blood and the gore and everything, and want to be tough guys. I don't know. The great thing about The Godfather was the story of the family, which is why I think it hit home for so many Italian Americans. And then, I mean, I don't know. Every family have somebody that was,
You'll have stories.
in the business
Sure.
or connected, I guess.
And, Mario Puzo's book, very different from the film. And we're not really going to address the book here today.
No, I did want to say something about Mario Puzo.
Okay, what do you got?
Well, it's a funny thing, and again, this was just one of the stories that was always came up when I was a little kid. My grandfather, who worked for the New York Central Railroad first in Manhattan, but mostly in Hudson County, New Jersey, in the late 1940s. There was a young guy that got a job there, kind of a runner, help out, do this, run around the office. Mario Puzo.
Really?
Yeah. So, when, of course, he later became a novelist and so on, and after World War II. But one of his first jobs was working at the New York Central. So the interesting connection, and my grandfather knew him as, hey, can you grab me this?
Go get this.
Puzo, get this. Right? He was a gopher. But one of the things that Mario Puzo did when he wrote The Godfather was he included a lot of names from guys in that office.
That's cool.
I mean, if you think about it, we're going to talk characters, but Robert Duvall's character, Tom Hagen.
Consigliere.
Okay. Tom Hagen was based, or the name came from a guy named Charlie Hagen, who was basically the manager of that division of the New York Central Railroad. Yeah, Charlie Hagen.
That's a cool thing.
So, we always joked about that. Of course, we would always say, Pop, why didn't they look at our last name? Why weren't we in the film? How cool would that have been? But that's true. Puzo worked for a short time in the New York Central, and some of the names did come from actual men that worked in the office with my grandfather.
That's a wild story.
Yeah.
Wild story.
Good stuff.
So let's start talking about the movies. We'll start with Godfather 1. What year was that produced?
72.
1972. A little
Best
bit.
Picture and blah, blah, blah.
It won awards.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit before us. We were babies when the first one came out. Directed by?
Coppola.
Francis Ford Coppola. And what would you say, how many years between 1 and 2?
Godfather 2 came out in 74.
Okay, so not that long of a distance between the 1 and 2.
Wow.
I think 3, and we'll talk about 3 in a few minutes. I think what was 3, 90?
Yeah, it was 90 or 91, right around there.
I think that distance of time between number 2 and number 3 affects number 3 to a lot of people. We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
So, Godfather 1. What's your favorite? Let's go through some of the characters for each of the movies. So obviously we have the Godfather, Don Corleone, played by
Brando.
Marlon Brando. Did he like that role? Did you ever? Read?
There are stories behind the way that casting, what they had to do to get Brando. And Coppola tells it. It's there's a documentary on it. But to get Brando to accept the part,
he didn't really want it.
No, they had to bribe him with wine and cheese, and basically put it out there. For 1972, Brando had done on the waterfront. I mean, he'd done.
He was already at the apex
established.
Of his career.
But so they, when they eventually got him, I mean, it goes down with the cotton stuffed in the cheeks and
right.
the raspy voice. I mean, right, a lot of with the face. That's what he's, to at least to our generation.
Right.
That's who Marlon Brando was.
When you say Marlon Brando, I picture The Godfather.
Of course,
generally.
Right.
I don't really picture...
Not Last Tango in Paris.
No, not so much. I wonder, could you imagine anyone else as Don Corleone now?
No, it's funny because, you move to some of the other, major characters. Brando was who they wanted to play the Don. But when it came to Michael... that James Caan was of course played Sonny Santino. That's who they wanted to be Michael. Yeah.
And it's funny, I can't imagine Sonny not being James Caan now. Let's talk about Sonny. Sonny was the next in line. Sonny had a problem at the toll stop on the expressway.
Well, he got set up. Remember?
Sure he did.
Carlo set him up.
Get the car, Carlo.
Carlo Rizzi.
Sonny was the hothead. I think James Caan played that well.
Great thing about Jimmy Caan was that everybody. I mean, I was a kid. I thought he was Italian.
Sure.
Brian's song. You saw him. Oh yeah, no, look, there's Santino Corleone. In a Chicago Bears uniform.
Yeah.
But everybody thought that he, not a prominent Jewish actor, but an Italian American.
Sonny was a good character. Michael. what do you think about Michael? Do you think he pulled it off? Obviously, for 3 films he does it.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he needed that kind of an understated, not that he had the, Fredo, who was more of the fool, but you needed an understated college, military, kind of a kid that, if you think about it, he mainstreamed and assimilated completely into the American culture. I don't get too much sociology on you here.
No.
But, he marries American. He doesn't marry an Italian girl.
Well, he marries, we'll get
into
that in a minute. We'll talk about which one.
One quick thing, though, about James Caan, about, in Godfather 1, and again, this is going to be a great connection to The Sopranos. The scene in Godfather 1 where, Michael wants to get revenge against McCluskey, against the police captain. And of course, Virgil Sollozzo, the Turk, is good with the knife. He wanted to get revenge against them after they, tried the assassination against his father. Right. And he's talking to Sonny, to James Caan, and it's that classic scene where James Caan is making fun of him, killing somebody. It's not like college boy, a tough guy. Yeah. And it's, it's not like the army. It's where you got to walk up to the guy and you bada bing, you blow your brains all over your nice Ivy League suit.
Sure.
That expression, bada bing, became
The Sopranos.
One of the crutches of The Sopranos, because, of course, it was the name of
the nightclub,
the strip club. Yeah, but whenever you hear the bada bing,
that's where it's wrong.
That's the scene, right?
And Al Pacino, by the time he's doing Godfather, had he already done Dog Day Afternoon?
No.
So Godfather was really a breakout.
Pacino did a lot of Broadway before that. But,
okay.
But he would then do Dog Day Afternoon and then get into,
other things.
A ton of his movies, right?
And as a star today. We talked about Fredo for a little bit. Always felt sad for Fredo. Always felt one of the characters I like, not my favorite. I'll bring him up in a minute. But Fredo was he got passed over. Right? Not like I got passed over. It was supposed to be Sonny.
You're jumping into Godfather 2 now.
I'm moving around.
But of course, in Godfather 1, where the assassination scene where he's buying the Don is buying oranges from the Asian guy, and there's Fredo fumbling with the gun,
Papa,
and he's cradling him, but he can't fire the weapon.
No.
Because he's the stunner.
And you're right. We'll get into 2 in a minute, but of course he has the wife,
that's
the
great.
dancer. All right, let's talk a little bit more about 1. My favorite character. Of course, I love the main guys, right? We love Michael, I love Sonny. I am a big Paul Clemenza fan. I've always liked Clemenza from the opening scene where they're at the communion party and he's drinking a wine out of the pitcher. And every scene that Clemenza is in.
That was Connie's wedding.
It's at the wedding
scene.
Yes,
I know it can get confusing, but
right.
He's got the wine over the shoulder, which was the way that we always were taught to pour the big jugs.
Sure.
He's got. He of course has the most famous, which would be after the killing of the driver, Paulie. When they get out, go ahead.
Take the gun, leave the cannoli.
No, it's opposite.
Is it leave the cannoli?
Leave the gun.
Leave the gun. Take the cannolis. I gotta get that wrong.
That's okay. That's
Clemenza.
That is. There's such.
Sollozzo calls him the fat Clemenza. I like Clemenza.
The fat Clemenza. When he's making the sauce and he's
I'm
trying to teach Mike someday to cook for 20 minutes and he's got all you put in all your sausage. He does it behind. He does a backhand.
Yeah.
Little things like that, man.
And then Tessio was played by Fish.
Right. Abe Vigoda.
Yeah. Right? That was another. He was kind of a quiet in the shadows guy. We know why.
I think we liked Clemenza more because he was not the one who screwed the Don. He was loyal. Right. It was Tessio.
And so then, of course, the Godfather, Don Corleone, the scene where he's in the garden with the orange in his mouth. Even when I was a little kid and I saw that, very sad scene to me. I always thought that was a sad way to go. And of course, he's gone. Michael takes over. And Godfather 1 ends with people coming to Michael, and Kay's got that look on her face like, what did I get into?
Well, wait a minute. Let's set the scene there. What Michael does is he organizes his power.
That's right.
He wipes out all the heads of the 5 families.
Stracci,
Cuneo, Stracci,
Mo Green.
Right. He takes them out, and then of course he reveals that Carlo, his brother-in-law, his new brother-in-law, is the one, Kay's wife. Kay, not Kay's wife, Jesus, Connie's husband. He was the one that betrayed the family.
And he had to go.
And then, the great scene with Clemenza in the back seat. Hello, Carlo. And then he garrots him with
piano wire. Yeah. Let's talk about Kay and Apollonia. Right, so Michael shoots the cop.
McCluskey
shoots Salazzo in the restaurant.
Right, Louis. Right.
Drops the gun, walks out, ends up in Sicily, walking around with a couple of the other guys who show up later in Godfather 2.
Tomasino. I mean, those are some key guys, right?
And they're walking around and say, he sees this girl, Apollonia,
school teacher,
calls over the father. Says, più greca di Italiano. Starts describing this girl. The father.
The dress, the suspenders when he did with the suspenders.
It's my daughter.
Oh, that's great. What a great scene.
It works out, and then Michael marries her. Apollonia, beautiful girl. Beautiful wedding scene where they're giving out the candy, the confetti.
Right.
They walk around.
She starts learning a little English.
Monday,
Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday.
Then bad things happen.
It's a hit. It's a hit on Michael that goes bad.
She's driving the car. She wants
to
drive.
Pick up, right.
I'm going to drive from the driveway. I'm going to drive up the
right. It was a big deal for her.
It's a shame. Pretty girl.
But boom, right.
And of course, Kay had no idea. That doesn't come out until. Is it the third where that pops out, where Kay knew about her or something?
No,
we don't really hear about it.
But you're right. I think he mentioned that he had married, but you might be right because they do talk about it extensively in number 3.
Yeah, it pops up again.
Yeah.
So Kay's at the end of Godfather 1, and she's just got this look. She's looking like, what?
Well, that's the beginning of, I think that's the beginning of Michael and Kay starting to split
up
because she confronts him, Michael.
It's one time. You can ask me about that.
And then he bold-faced lies right
there.
in her face. So and then as the door closes, there's Clemenza kissing Michael. Bending over, kissing the ring.
That's it. So that's Godfather 1. A couple years later, Godfather 2 comes out.
My favorite character emerges in Godfather 2.
Okay, so let's talk. Godfather 2 opens up. This time it's not a wedding. This time it is a communion.
Well,
in Tahoe, no?
It's actually the flashbacks.
So
Remember, Godfather 2. We're going to start off all the way back with Don Cheech.
Yes, explaining how Don Corleone got here.
Correct.
Now we go to a new actor who will play the young Don Corleone, and who is that?
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro.
Yep.
He comes up with and he plays a pretty good young Don Corleone.
Fantastic.
Explains him getting to New York. As a child, he doesn't pass the physical.
Well, go back to where they were looking for him. Remember, the mom takes young Vito
Vendetta
to the Don Chicho, to the villa, right? And it basically says, "You killed my son. You killed my husband.
Leave him alone.
Leave him alone." And then a great answer when she asks him, and he looks at her and he says, "No."
We'll see Don Cheech later on too. As an old man.
Yep.
They hunt him down. Somebody helps him. He gets out of town, makes his way to New York.
Ellis Island. Great Ellis Island scene.
It is.
Recreating, the entrance of immigrants.
And where the name comes from, because his name was Antonio Antonellis.
It was Vito Andolini.
Andolini. There you go. And then the guy just says...
Watched this film a couple times.
I'm sure, yeah.
Right.
So have I, but I get myself in a tizzy. And he changes the last name to Corleone. That's the village he's from, and that's it. That's his name.
It's
a lot of Italians that happen to.
Big, and again, I'm going to play with the nationalities here. It's a big Irish immigration agent who looks at it, and again, there was a lot of problems between Irish and Italians back then, and Coppola does such a great job at it because the disgust in his face when he looks and he just goes. Corleone.
This is your name.
Get out of here. Right? Dirty Italian.
And that happened to a lot of Italians. Their names got changed at Ellis Island. And that movie, the good thing I like about Godfather 2 is the flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you see how it all really gets started.
Yep.
It's where he meets Paul Clemenza, who's played by Victor Kirby.
Bruno Kirby.
I'm getting all my names backwards.
It's okay. Where he has him hide the gun
Yeah.
in his
Yeah.
tub, and then they steal the rug. Oh, that is
Yamonin, Vito, Yamonin.
and he's going to shoot the cop. He's standing behind a door like this.
It doesn't happen. This is my friend's house. He must have left the key.
He forgot to leave it.
And that shows how it got started.
Yeah, because he takes control from the neighborhood strong. The guy in the white suit.
Yeah, what was his
the
name?
Black Hand, they
Black
call
Hand.
him.
Yeah, his name.
And he, I mean, that's where basically Vito stands up to him and says, I'm not paying you. We're not going to pay you.
And then he takes over. I mean, they get rid of him, and then he becomes the Godfather.
He kills him.
And that lays, that kind of explains everything to you, which a good sequel for a movie that's kind of does. It refers back to the first one. You start to say, oh, that's why. Yeah. That's who these people are. That's how this got started.
Yeah, and think, Godfather 2 is about 4 hours long. And if you think about it, they could have done the flashback scenes as its own film.
True. Yeah.
And then, carried it on to the communion in Lake Tahoe when they kick it back in the 1950s.
There you go.
They could have been 2 separate films.
It could have been. Very well done. And for a long time, I used to think Godfather 1 was my favorite. And then for a very long time, Godfather 2, I appreciated more and more. And I think the flashbacks was one part of that. Godfather 2 is a good movie.
One of the characters that emerges in Godfather 2, who is my favorite, is Frankie Five Angels. Is Frank Pentangeli, who played by Michael Gazzo.
By Tom.
I'm so you know what, and again, this is a soft spot to me. When I look at Michael Gazzo and Pentangeli, that's my grandfather. He looked like him. He sounded like the little mustache, the bald head, everything, his mannerisms. And again, I know you love it too. The first scene when he's drinking from the hose. He's at a wedding with champagne cocktails, and he's at the hose getting a cold drink. I mean, that's
where you find out Paul Clemenza has passed away.
He's wearing a black. They're wearing a black arm.
He goes, Paul Clemenza, he's dead.
That was no heart attack.
That was no heart attack.
And that brings in Willie Chichi, who is a fantastic character in it because he's with old man with Pentangeli.
Sure.
I love him. I love Pentangeli.
They have to talk to the Congress. They have to go to the Senate hearing.
They bring his brother in.
And that's a great scene because he sees his brother.
The whole scene at the Senate hearing when they bring in the brother, right, and he's got to get the tie with the 2 little red balls.
Sure.
And then he sits down and there's that the look. Pentangeli looks at the brother. And Michael Corleone is staring at him. And they don't have to speak a word, right?
No words are spoken. It's all understood.
And then we get the classic when the senator, Mr. Pentangeli, Michael Corleone said this. Michael Corleone said that.
I said, yeah, sure.
All lies.
I was in the olive oil business.
He's got
his grandfather.
He's got the cigar.
Yeah.
I know.
I got my own family. I got my own family, Senator.
Oh man! Well, I tell you what.
Pentangeli's a good.
Boom! I'm sorry. I love him.
That's a great.
And then of course to kind of finish him out, the character wise, they have him held, and he's going to be he's a loose end.
Mm.
And that meeting when Tom Hagen goes to see him, and they're walking in the federal compound, and they're in it, and they're sharing a cigar, and Hagen lights it, and they. Frankie, you read a lot of history, and then he just basically lays out and says, that you have to kill yourself, and your family will be taken care of. And potentially, Tom, sometimes they laid in a hot bath.
And that little party.
Man, they open their veins. That's it. Right? And then Robert Duvall does the best, where he puts about 2 puffs out of that cigar, and he throws it. Yeah. He goes, take care, Frankie Five Angels.
Frankie Five
They
Angels.
shake hands, and that's what he's going to do. Yeah.
So two is great because of the flashbacks. Frankie Five Angels. All the characters in 2 are great.
A lot of people that felt a certain way that it was not New York anymore. It was Vegas. Now the flashbacks, of course, you're in old Little Italy.
Yeah, Mulberry Street.
Right. You're talking about the early 1900s, 19-teens. Yeah. So you got a great taste of that.
And the scene again early in the film where the Black Hand is still around. I believe that's the Feast of San Gennaro.
Fanucci.
Don Fanucci. I believe it's during the feast.
It could have been, right? It could have definitely
been. Which is
been.
coming up, September 11th.
September 19th.
Is it 19th?
My brother's birthday.
Up in Little Italy, still today in New York.
Well,
And in Godfather 3, there's a scene
Yes,
of
there
that.
is.
So we'll get there.
Zaza.
We'll get there in a second. Anything else on 2?
But you're right. The festival in Little Italy with Fanucci. How Don Vito plays it out. We meet Genko. In the olive oil company, and it's such a great job getting us set for the rest of the 1950s version, or time frame,
right?
And then of course beyond.
And then of course the Genko Abondando was the first consigliere.
That's correct.
Before Tom Hagen.
That's correct.
And Genko Olive Oil Company was the front.
Yes.
And in 2, of course, we have the scene where the young Don Corleone goes back, and he goes back up to Don Cheech. And he
for
says,
the revenge.
But he says,
I'm an olive oil salesman.
Hey, we're going to make this olive oil. It's named after our town. Olive oil Genko, si chiama Genko Olive Oil Company. And Don Cheech goes,
like, what do you want me to do with it? Right.
And then the great scene where he takes out the knife. He comes over and says, tell me your name.
What's your name, right?
He says, Antonio
Vito Corleone. And then he says, your father's name.
Questo petit. Boom. And he sticks him and then pulls it up like this. Horrible way to go for the old man.
Great.
But he deserved it, I guess.
No, that's great.
Also in Godfather 2, you've got the scenes in Cuba, which again for history guys, that's really kind of a cool scene.
Yep.
Where and you see Cheech, a smaller piece when they go to the birthday party for
Hyman Roth's
birthday party.
Right on the top of the hotel, the casino in Cuba.
Yeah.
And they bring out the cake.
And you get a little bit of the history. Again, you get a little backstory there where he goes, me and your father, we got the trucks, and we started with and you start hearing all the how they got started.
Hyman Roth, and of course Hyman Roth's right-hand man was an Italian, Johnny Ola. And again, a little bit of a connection. Johnny Ola, played by Dominic Chianese, who would then go into The Sopranos as Uncle Junior.
Junior with
Corrado
the glasses.
Soprano was. I mean, it's this.
A lot of those actors got typecast.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's okay.
Fine. But the whole gambling thing in Cuba with the fall of the strong man and the communist insurrection. On New Year's Eve, I mean, the kiss. We haven't even talked about the kiss.
No, how do you say banana daiquiri? banana
daiquiri.
It's great. It's a great scene.
Oh man!
And in that film, of course, we'll wrap up to Fredo. Turns out that Fredo was the weak link. Michael finds out that it was Fredo, and he gives him that kiss.
Yeah,
on
kiss
New
of
Year's
death,
Eve.
right?
And then later we find Al Neri takes Vito out fishing, and that's the last we see of Fredo.
And there's that great scene when Mama Corleone dies, and at that point, it's funny that Connie comes back into it. She has to negotiate whether or not Fredo can be there at the funeral,
right,
at the wake, and that's where Michael talks to him. But again, I kind of got ahead of myself. That great scene where Michael confronts him at Tahoe. And where Fredo, he basically spills that for his whole life he was the neglected.
He was
passed over. He was the dumb one. And
yeah.
I'm smart.
I'm smart. Not dumb like people say. I'm smart. I can do things. Fredo's a sad character.
Now, very quickly, and I know we're running here, but the actor John Cazale, who plays Fredo, he goes down. Of course, he was in Godfather 1. He was in Godfather 2. Then he was in Dog Day Afternoon. Followed that up with The Deer Hunter in 76.
He passed away.
Okay. His films that he was in were all-time blockbuster, classic American films.
Yeah.
He did, 4 or 5 films, and the next thing you know, he dies of cancer.
Yeah.
Right after the Deer Hunter.
Good actor.
Yep.
So let's try to bump into number 3. Now, again, when number 3 came out, I think there was a lot of people were waiting on it, and I think a lot of people got let down. I remember at that time people not really.
Oh, it got destroyed with the production of it. I remember Michael Corleone's daughter in the film, played by Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, Sophia, who's now a big-time, producer and director in her own right.
Sure.
She took a lot of heat because it was her first film and her acting was not, they didn't think it was at the level necessary. But what a great cast. I mean, think about it.
Now, looking back, I have a respect for number 3 that I didn't have in the 90s.
Right.
In fact, I dismissed it. I watched it once in the theater. And then I let it alone. I let it go for years and years. Now, many years later, three is okay. There's some good spots in 3.
Well, I mean, what a great job bringing back Sonny's bastard child.
Who plays
in
that?
the guise of, or Andy Garcia plays.
Andy Garcia.
I mean, what Vincent.
Vincent.
What a great
bites off the
role.
Bites off Joey Zaza's ear.
Right. Played by Joe Mantegna. I mean, what a great cast. Eli Wallach shows up as Don Altobello. There are some great moments.
I think 3 turned people off. I think people were shocked with the church, the Catholic Church, the Pope, International Immobiliare, the dark side of the business side of the church being involved.
Right.
And then Michael, I like to get a pin from the Pope, Mike. I think that turned some people off. I think some people didn't want to. Basically, they said that they killed a Pope, right? They gave the good Pope, gave him the tea, the one that gave Michael the rock. He gave him a glass of orange juice because he was diabetic.
That's right.
This is also in 3. You see, Michael is not indestructible. Michael's weak.
Right.
He's sick. He's weak. Every time they pull me, they try to pull me back in. And we see Connie becoming the leader of the family. Really, by the end of the film, it's Connie giving the orders.
She orders the hit on Joey Zaza.
Sure.
After everything goes bad in Atlantic City.
That was a bad.
What a scene that was with the helicopter and
shoot everybody up.
Right, and of course Vincent Mancini, who is Sonny's illegitimate son. Andy Garcia, he saves. Remember that scene where he's pulling a Don out, and he stops and picks up a body and holds it in front of him. Just spontaneous, right?
Joey Zaza.
Right. Oh, and all the guys, my favorite coat. The one guy couldn't get out because he was trying to get his
jacket. Favorite coat, my lucky jacket.
So that whole part of it, Connie, while Michael is he has the diabetic stroke. She orders the hit on Joey Zaza.
Connie becomes the leader. It's 3 has its place.
This is rated PG. We can't do that scene where they're giving away the car.
Oh yeah.
Hey Joey Zaza. Hey, he got the key.
Yeah.
Who's gonna win the car, Joey?
This is who gives Italian Americans a
gavone like this.
3's okay. If you haven't seen 3 in a while, go ahead back. Watch 3. It takes place in the late 70s, late 70s.
Correct.
It was a gritty time.
Yep. A lot of good Italy stuff in number 3 as well, where they go back, and of course Michael's son is now an opera singer. And he's going to perform in Corleone, and we got the whole assassination scene there. The kid with Mosca,
the assassin,
the kid with the donkey. And then Altobello and eating the poison cannoli. Oh, there's so much.
All our ships must sail in the same direction.
It was all about money, wasn't it? It wasn't so much the
here's
shoot 'em up thing.
A reference. If you're a fan of Donnie Brasco is happening at that time, that late 70s, that kind of an edgy time as far as the mafia. Because by then, that was the third generation. Those guys weren't keeping the vow.
The Omerta.
Right,
that's correct.
Things were changing. The drug culture had changed the mafia. There was a couple things going on. So number 3 takes that into account. And I think 3 is worth being mentioned now, where I kind of let it go for a long time.
What's your most memorable line from all of them? Do you have one? We use the one with, leave the gun, take the cannolis. There's the other one where Michael's talking to my guy, to Frank Pentangeli, and he talks about, my father used to sit in this room and he taught me many things here, and it's the whole keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Yeah.
That's a famous line.
I like so many.
I know.
The scene where Godfather 2, where they had tried to shoot up their Tahoe home. Mm-hmm. He says, in my bedroom, where my kids sleep, my kids play with their toys. My wife sleeps, and my kids play with their toys.
Yeah,
I'll use that from time. Here's one where Tessio, where he goes, "Hey Mike, Can you give me a break
For old
time's sake? You know, and that's
Yep.
so many good scenes.
Pentangeli, when Michael sits down and says he knows it was the Rosado brothers. Let's hit them all now while we got the muscle. I mean, there's hundreds of lines.
Too many to go. We did a long show. This is 3 times longer than my normal show, but we couldn't stop. You see, we started getting on a roll.
I know, I'm all excited.
Imagine what it's like being in a classroom with us, all right, or in a hallway. We have a good time. Godfather, iconic American film. Thanks for letting David and I spend a couple minutes with you today talking about it. Leave some comments. Tell us what you think. Your favorite scenes, your favorite people.
Good stuff.
All right. And
thank you, buddy.
Thank you, my good friend. And to everybody out there, take it easy, and we'll see you again real soon, all right?
Ciao.
And now we got to shut her off. Bye, everybody.